One thing all living organisms have in common is that they need food. They need food for a number of reasons, basically for survival. And without food, they cannot survive. Food is needed for growth, they're needed for repair, but the main supply or source of energy comes from food. And that is why all of us eat. Without energy, we cannot do anything. We cannot breathe, we cannot reproduce, we cannot move, we cannot grow. So all life function basically depends on the supply of energy coming from food. So of all the living things that exist on Earth, a few categories can actually make their own food. We have basically talked about the ability of some organisms, such as plants, that could photosynthesize or make their own food in the process of photosynthesis. An autotrophic, whatever way you want to pronounce that, or producer is an organism that makes its own food. Now we know from our previous lesson that organisms that make their own food their cell contains something called chloroplast. And the chloroplast is what is responsible for organisms to make their own food. Examples of organisms are plants, algae, and a few bacteria. So as you can see on the side of rocks, you might see green stuff growing. They are most likely will be an algae or algae growing there. Leaves and bacteria, they all have, and few bacteria, not all bacteria, but they all have the ability to make their own food. So they're placed into category of producers or autotrophic organisms. Another category that we could use is heterotrophic. Heterotrophic are consumers. They cannot make their own food, so they need to feed another organism. As you can see, this bear is feeding off of a fish, or a donkey feeding off of leaves, or even this amoeba, which is a unicellular or single cell organism. If you notice, that's the food, and it's going to enclose that by moving closer and closer, and pulling it inside of the cytoplasm. So all organisms that depend on another organism for their energy source is called a heterotrophic or consumer. We can further subdivide producers or heterotrophic into 1, 2, 3 classes. The first class is carnivores. C-A-R-N-I-V-O-R-E-S. Carnivores are organisms that eat only meat. So if you notice an animal is eating only meat, it is basically classed as a carnivore. Herbivores are organisms that eat only plant materials. Herbivore, H-E-R-B-I-V-O-R-E. And finally, another class we can class heterotrophic organisms into is being omnivore, O-M-N-I-V-O-R-E. And omnivores are organisms that eat both plants and animals. We as human beings are classified as omnivores because we can eat both plants and also we can eat animals. So human beings being omnivores in the class of heterotrophs, we feed on a range of things, from vegetables to meat to cheese to eggs. Some of these things are processed. Some of these things like sushi we eat quite raw. But most of the times when we cook our food, we cook it basically to get rid of bacteria or to get rid of microorganisms, to use a better word. So microorganisms, once they get into our body, they can get our body sick. So to get rid of that, we apply heat and we add flavor to our food for tasting and so forth, but we kind of enhance our food a little bit different from animals in the wild. However, all living things, whatever they eat, they are either trying to get one or multiple sources of these things. Proteins, P-R-O-T-E-I-N-S. Carbohydrates, C-A-R-B-O-H-Y-D-R-A-T-E-S. Lipids or fats, lipids, L-I-P-I-D-S. Minerals, minerals, vitamins, vitamins, or water, water. Each one of these 6 items is essential for a different reason in our body. For example, if we eat proteins, proteins basically help us in growing or help organisms to grow. They help to repair damaged tissues and cells, and they help to maintain our body. Carbohydrates, on the other hand, is a good source of energy. This is the energy food, and excess of carbohydrate is stored as fats. Lipids, they're important because they help with insulation for organisms. They help with the cell structure, and also they provide energy. Vitamins, they help with chemical reactions that are needed in our body. Minerals are needed for bones, teeth, intra and extracellular functions. That means that things are happening in the cell and outside of the cell. Water is like 70% of our body is made of water. So we need a lot of water, and water helps in providing that medium for chemical reaction. They help to transport things in our body, help to maintain body temperature and maintain the cell. So if we have, for example, carbohydrates, lipids, vitamins, minerals, water, and no protein, we're going to have a problem with repairing tissues and growing and generally maintaining our body. Similarly, if we eat everything else, and we do not eat carbohydrates, we would not have a source of energy as much as we can get it from fat. Eventually the fat will be used up, and we need to replenish our body with carbohydrates because carbohydrates are more readily available. So as you can see, these 6 things are very important to maintain life in a living organism. So eating does not only give us one thing. There are several combinations of things that we need in our body to happen, and food helps us to get that or achieve that. So we can categorize the types of food that we eat, or things that we're getting out of it, into 2 groups, or 2 major groups. We have our macromolecules and our micromolecules. Macromolecules includes things such as carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids or fats. Or micromolecules are things such as vitamins and minerals. Basically, what I want you to know is that macromolecules are made up of large chemical bonds, and they are needed in a very large quantity. However, micromolecules, they are needed in smaller amounts. So macromolecules, they include carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and micromolecules are vitamins and minerals, and they are needed in smaller amounts.